Bihari Kunda Bihari Gopi Jana Baba Giridhari Gopi Jana Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master and founder Acharya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namade. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachani Devi Sesha Sunyavadi Paskita De Satorne. So we're reading from text 45. It's the last chapter of this verse, the punishment and reward of Kali. And it's been a really interesting chapter. So let's see. Everything's prepared. Is this Balaram's aunt?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see the resemblance. Was she a young woman? Or is that another picture? Okay. Anyway, so Bhutanu Babo Yam Itam Bhutanu Babo Yam Abhimanyu Suto Nirpa Abhimanyu Suto Nirpa Yasya Palayata Shanim Yasya Palayata Shanim Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Dikshita.
Yuyam Sutraya Dikshita.
Yuyam Sutraya Dikshita.
Ittam Bhuta Nubhavoyam.
Ittam Bhuta Nubhavoyam.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Yasya Palayata Gaush. Shaunim. Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Ittam Bhutanu
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim. Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshata.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita. Anyone else?
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Ittam Bhutanu Bhavoyam.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Abhimanyu Sutta Nripa.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yasya Palayata Shaunim.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita.
Yuyam Satraya Dikshita. Okay. So, just one quick note. We just had a vote before the class, and Saturdays now will be an alternate day. Like this Saturday I'm doing, next Saturday is Madhukriya Prabhu. The following Saturday will be Krishna Shraya's debut class, which we're all looking forward to. And then the fourth one is Yogendra Prabhu. And we're rotating like that. And then, and, of course, any guests come along or anyone else wants to jump into it, that's fine. But that way, not we're having a variety. So, word for word. Ittam Bhuta.
Ittam Bhuta.
Being thus.
Being thus.
Anubhava. Experience. Ayam. Of this. Abhimanya. You. Sutta. Son of Abhimanyu. Nripa. The king. Yasya. Whose. Palayata. On account of his ruling. Shaunim. On the earth. Yuyam. You all. Satraya. In performing sacrifices. Dikshata. initiated.
Initiated.
So I'll say it, and you please repeat. Maharaj Pariksit,
Maharaj Pariksit,
the son of Abhimanyu,
the son of Abhimanyu,
is so experienced
is so experienced
that by dint of his expert administration
that by dint of his expert administration
and patronage, it has been possible for you to perform a sacrifice such as this. Maharaj Pariksit, the son of Abhimanyu, is so experienced that by dint of his expert administration and patronage, it has been possible for you to perform a sacrifice such as this. He's talking to the sages of Namasaranya. So in other words, the administration of Pariksit Maharaj, the institutions and the way things were to be managed was set in place, carried on by his son Jamanjaya, and then following emperors after that. But it was able to carry on for some time after his departure, Parikit's departure. And so they can continue this sacrifice that went on for 1,000 years. Like these devotees now, they do these weekend, like they're going to do one Holy Name Festival for 3 days. And I saw one this morning in Mayapur. It's at Navadvip. And I saw Kavi Chandra and one of the twins, I don't know which one it was, Pumpkin Janna or Gyanivas, but they were speaking these beautiful pastimes about Bhakti Vinod. And so they're doing a 3-day parikrama and chanting in Navadvip. So these things are going on all over. Someone told me there was one in Ukraine, I think a few months back. It was like 8,000, 9,000 people. I saw pictures of it in a pando. And all these devotees are up on the stage, and then it's just, the camera can make it seem, but it was huge. And the women were all really dressed really nicely, and because they're from the Soviet bloc, they really have a sense of balletic moves. That, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but in former Soviet Union, they're very much into dance, and there was a lot of competition. You can ask Vedanta Krit's wife that when she was a young girl, they would come to town, and out of 100, one would be chosen to go and join either the Bolshoi or the Kiev. It's very serious. So you see these girls, they do these moves, and they'll do so many steps like that. It's all very, very nicely choreographed. And I remember we used to do this. Bhagavatam had a thing before we would go on Harinam, and we would practice. Like we'd have a circle thing, where we got in a big circle, and at a certain point, all of a sudden, we'd go like this, then like that, and then we do a move going in, like that. And we had this, but these women, they're doing like this. Like that, and then they do some other twirl, and then they twirl around. It just looks so amazing. And there's like 8,000 chanting. It's incredible. It really, warms the heart. So, I don't know why I brought that up, but what? Oh. So now it's time for me to read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Brahmanas and the Sannyasis are expert in the spiritual advancement of society, whereas the Kshatriyas, or the administrators, are expert in the material peace and prosperity of human society. Both of them are in the pillars of all happiness, and therefore they are meant for full cooperation for common welfare. Maharaj Pariksit was experienced enough to drive away Kali from his field of activities and thereby make the state receptive to spiritual enlightenment. If the common people are not receptive, it is very difficult to impress upon them the necessity of spiritual enlightenment. Austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, the basic principles of religion, prepare the ground for reception of advancement in spiritual life. And Maharaj Pariksit made this favorable condition possible Thus the rishis of Namasharanya were able to perform the sacrifices for 1,000 years. In other words, without state support, no doctrines of philosophy or religious principles can progressively advance. There should be complete cooperation between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas for this common good. Even up to Maharaj Ashoka, the same spirit was prevailing. Lord Buddha was sufficiently supported by King Ashoka, and thus his particular cult of knowledge was spread all over the world. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Punishment and Reward of Kali. The verse again is, Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Abhimanyu, is so experienced that by dint of his expert administration and patronage, it has been possible for you to perform a sacrifice such as this. So, there's a lot of points here. And this is the last verse also, so I was thinking to do a kind of a review. But I want to pick up on the theme that has come up in the last couple of days. I gave that, when I spoke about, Balavanta's attempts to preach in the political field and run as a candidate. We had so many interesting experiences. And as Chaitanya Chandra mentioned, I think Yogendra Prabhu also reiterated that point yesterday, that in those days we really thought that it would just be a matter of time. We could do anything, and we were doing everything. We were doing things that were impossible. We were getting. There was the title of Shamsunda's book, Chasing Rhinoceros. The example was, Prabhupada used to say, go for the rhinoceros, which means that if you go on a hunting excursion, the most difficult animal probably to take down is a rhinoceros. So if you don't make it, you gave it your best shot. At least you tried. But if you do, all the more amazing. So Prabhupada was always preaching and pushing us, encouraging us, not to break our spirit, but to encourage us that yes, you can do anything. And with Prabhupada, whenever you saw him or around him, or you just heard his voice, or you just heard some message, the Prabhupada just said, I remember one time I got a phone call from a devotee by the name of Radha Ballabha in Los Angeles, and he said, Srila Prabhupada just said that they're all bastards. I said, what? He said, yeah, anyone who doesn't know who their father is a bastard. And they don't know that Krishna is their father. So they're all bastards. That was the kind of thing you could expect at any time. And that just like, wow. And one time, around this time of year, Balavanta had flown into the airport, and I wasn't planning on saying these things, they're just coming. But somebody had called up from the newspaper and asked my thoughts about Thanksgiving and how we celebrated. And I said, well, we try to give thanks every day to God. Every time we cook a meal, we offer it and give thanks to God for this preparation. And but it's nice that once a year in the American culture has this day set aside for everyone giving thanks. But it is a little ironic, if not hypocritical, to give thanks to God for giving us a nice bird, to slaughter, cut out its insides and stuff it with bread and vegetables, and then eat its flesh. I said that I don't know if that's exactly something that God would want you to thank Him for. So, and it was quoted exactly, and I didn't know. I just thought it was some guy trying to do. And there was a bunch of series of quotes. And Balavanta had just flown into the airport, and he calls me before he was on his way to the temple, but he had to call me immediately. He said, "Did you get an interview by the paper about Thanksgiving?" I said, Yeah, there was some guy called. I just said, "Wow, it's great." You know, that was kind of the gist of what I said. But it's giving thanks for giving us birds to kill. You know, so where was I? So I lost my train of thought. Anyway, so we are. The age of Kali is a very daunting age, and there's some really the symptoms of them. In the age of Kali, a man is judged by how much money he has. He's considered. You may even be considered maybe not even a good religious person if you don't have money. You definitely don't have good character if you don't have money. It doesn't matter how you achieve this money. You could be the biggest crook in the world or engage in the most heinous acts that are very sinful. But if you have money, then you're respected. Ignorance is accepted as knowledge. Like we think that the creation, they're actually proposing that, you know, Darwin's theory on evolution should be taught, but not intelligent design. They think that everything resulted as a matter of, because there was a huge explosion. And then after that explosion, this perfectly orchestrated universe with all these planets floating in perfect synchronization happened just because as a result of a major explosion. There was once a BTG thing, article or cartoon or something that devotees did. It was called the Big Bang Construction Company, and you give us, we have several choices. There's the ranch, there's the log cabin, there's the split level, different types of houses. You can also get what was his name? Wright, Lord, Lloyd. Frank Lloyd Wright, yeah. You could get a Frank Lloyd Wright if you want. And you just bring us the materials, and then we'll set the dynamite and see what happens. And if it doesn't,
Choose your colors.
Choose your colors, yeah. And which direction you want the house facing, and see if it happens. We'll see what happens, And we'll do it until we get it right. So don't think that's going to work. So anyway, this is ignorance. And we have knowledge. And so this is the age of Kali. So we really do feel like, we did back then in those days. That's why we would run candidates for different political posts. And we had amazing successes. Even though we didn't get so many votes, although I don't think they ever counted all our votes, because the third time we were going to run a campaign, we had to do a petition. And I actually went, we were going to run for, Bhagavatam was going to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. Not the state, but the House of Representatives. This is after he had run a state Congress position, and then he ran for mayor, and then he was going to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. And our main candidate was Andrew Young, who is, if any of you know, he was one of Martin Luther King's top lieutenants. As a matter of fact, in the famous picture on the motel where Martin Luther King was shot, you see him pointing like that towards the direction of where the shot came from. And so we had a relationship with him already, and I went into him, dressed like a devotee, and I asked him, we're thinking about running for against you, and we would hope that you see this as not necessarily a threat to you, but we're just trying to make it more interesting for you, because it's just going to be one political slogan versus another, and here's a chance to really talk about the philosophy of what a real good leader is, something of substance, and so it'll make it more interesting for you. And you saw what happened when in the mayor's race, Walter Cronkite said that we were the most interesting candidate in that race, and we actually introduced a whole new sort of transcendental politics. And so we were being praised nationally by Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America. So I said, so we need so many signatures, and I was thinking that you could sign the petition that William Ogle could run against you. And he said, well, I was sort of hoping you'd support us. And I said, yeah, well, I was kind of hoping you'd just like support the idea that we'd run and we can have a nice philosophical debate. No threat to you. He said, all right, I'll sign it for you. So then I made copies of that, and then we would go around, the boys would go around and say, see, even our opponent, Andrew Young, thinks Mr. Ogle should run. So we got like 60,000 signatures. And when we were going around, the doors were going around. So many people told us that they had voted for Bhagavatam for mayor. It was way more than what the actual tally was. But it didn't really matter. You know, the point is that we got so much exposure, hundreds of thousands of dollars of air, and we had so many connect. And after that, there was so many residual effects that affected our ability to stay in those buildings on that property, because one of the candidates became a Superior Court judge who ruled in our favor in this very difficult case. And you know, there's so many things I could point to, but and here's another thing is, I don't know if anybody knows who Lester Maddox is, but Lester Maddox was the governor of Georgia. He was a white separatist. He was famous for a pickaxe. He used to have a souvenir shop down in underground Atlanta selling pickaxe. That he, you know,
with handles.
With handle. You had the handle of the axe, not the axe, but just the handle. And he would use that to beat anybody who was supporting the civil rights movement, black or white. And Bhagavatam got an interview with him. He was lieutenant governor at the time. And I called all the newspapers and said, you know, I just was down here at the WSB, you know, the one on Briarcliff. I think it was a CBS affiliate. He had done an interview there. And it looked like I was calling from the TV station. I used their phone. So I said, and I just heard William Ogle's on his way to go see Lester. Yeah, Lieutenant Governor Maddox. Yeah, he's going to have an interview. They're going to go talk. So when we got there, all the press was there. Mm-hmm. So when they came out, Mr. Maddox is sitting in one chair, Bhagavatam is another. He had given him a Bhagavad Gita and said, his quote was, I think Mr. Ogle is the most God-conscious candidate in this race. Okay, so now fast forward, Hosea Williams. Hosea Williams in Atlanta, the what was it called? The SCLC? The Southern Christian League Leadership for colored people or something like that. And he was the street fighter. He was the guy, and he was the Atlanta branch. That was Martin Luther King's one of his organizations. And when we walked into his office, he had a picture behind his desk of Martin Luther King sitting in a chair with a Bhagavad Gita, not ours, but with a Bhagavad Gita. And above him was a picture of Gandhi. Mm. So it was like he accepted Gandhi as like a guru. Mm. And he had gone to one of Gandhi's ashrams. That's where he learned his nonviolent civil disobedience. And so Hosea Williams just ate it up. And he was really concerned about the health of the Afro-American community, and he wanted to change their diet. So he was very interested in vegetarianism. And we helped him with cooking classes and stuff. And everybody wanted to get his support. They wanted him to support because their campaign. There was like 10 other candidates. And because he was running for president of the city council, which is like vice mayor. And he wasn't biting on anybody. And then he did a press conference.
He wasn't what?
Biting. He wasn't going for anybody. He wasn't taking the bait. So then we had a press conference. It was front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Hosea Williams comes out endorsing William Ogle. So then we had a flyer. We put together a flyer that says, we have brought Lester Maddox and Hosea Williams together. They both say that he is the most God-conscious candidate in the race. It was, you just like, you can't, there was no obstacle. If you just do it, so that was the mood. And, now over the years, things have, Maya and Kali have been really pounding away at us. And we got to remember, we really did, and we really can change things for the better. And I was really enlivened. I didn't know how I was going to start this class, and I just started in a way that I didn't plan on it. But I wanted to read. I did some research on Ashok, Maharaj Ashok, that Prabhupada mentions here that there should be complete cooperation between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas for the common good. Even up to the time of Maharaj Ashok, the same spirit was prevailing. Lord Buddha was sufficiently supported by King Ashok. Thus, his particular cult of knowledge was spread all over the world. Now, Maharaj Ashok and Lord Buddha were not contemporaries. They were 100 or 200 years apart. But Maharaj Ashok was a very, very powerful king. And I don't want to get into the whole story of his life. But at a certain point, he sort of had an epiphany, much like Lord Buddha did. The story is that Lord Buddha was kept in a very privileged compound, and he was surrounded by only youth and beauty. And then he wanted to find out what was going on outside, and he saw someone who was old, he saw someone who was sick, and he saw someone who had died. And then he had this, come to Jesus moment, or come to Buddha moment, and he decided to try to find out the purpose of, the real purpose of life, how to avoid these miseries. And Maharaj Ashok, very, very successful military man, and one day, for some reason, he had been not really realized the extent of the carnage of his maneuvers and his fighting. So he saw how much the violence and the suffering that he had caused by taking over this one village. And his empire expanded from the borders of Afghanistan and Iran, today's Afghanistan, today's Iran, that far, to the western border of Burma, all of India, except for Orissa, and all the way down to the south, except for Sri Lanka. And this was it was called, I don't know how to say it exactly. You know, it's Maurya, Mauryn or something like that. The Maurya Empire. And he inherited part of it from his father. But then he really made his mark. He is really pushed it forward. And he was a very, very brilliant military strategist and very powerful fighter. But he, like I said, he saw the result of violence. So he becomes interested in the teachings of Buddha. And so I wanted to read some of the things and they are very similar to what I believe it was Yogendra gave a class a few days ago, or last week, when he read some of the 4 principles or 5 principles that Prabhupada suggests for a kingdom. So first there's there's 10 precepts outlined by Lord Buddha, according to this particular site I was looking at. And it's called Dasa Raja's Dharma. And this was the state religion around 260 BC, before Christ. So there's the 10 principles, but then there's the edicts that he put into place based on these principles. So the 10 principles are to be liberal and avoid selfishness, 2, to maintain high moral character. 3, to be prepared to sacrifice one's own pleasure for the well-being of the subjects. 4, to be honest and maintain absolute integrity. 5, to be kind and gentle. 6, to lead a simple life for the subjects to emulate. 7, to be free from hatred of any kind. 9, to practice patience. 10, to respect public opinion, to promote peace and harmony. Now, some of these things are right from what we've been talking about. Cleanliness, honesty, being as humble as a blade of grass, as tolerant as a tree, giving respect to all, not expecting any for yourself. And this is the principles that he based his. And it says here that this Dharma was not a new religion nor a new political philosophy. It was a way of life outlined in a code of conduct, a set of principles, a code of conduct or a set of principles that he encouraged his subjects to adopt to lead a peaceful and prosperous life. So, because the point is that we were thinking, well, how is it possible? I heard both Chaitanya Chandra say it and Yogendra Prabhu say it. Well, how can we come up with a campaign that says we're going to close your slaughterhouses, we're going to close your the gambling houses, the taverns, all of these things. How's that? You can't run on a campaign like that. Just like Prabhupada, when he first came to America, I gave the example that he didn't tell them about the 4 rules. Like his godbrother, in England, he told that Lord Jetland that I can make you a Brahmin, you just have to give up, illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, gambling. And he said, that's impossible. So Rupa Goswami says that if you give someone a taste for this chanting, then those rules and regulations will follow like maidservants. So first of all, Prabhupada got them addicted to chanting Hare Krishna. Then, one day, on November 24th, 1966, Wali, who later became Umapati, asked, Swamiji, is there any rules to this club, this group? These guys and I, there was one Mataji, Radharani, and little did they know it was the beginning of international society, a mission to conquer the world, Lord Chaitanya's mercy mission. And so then he posted the next day, and it's dated. It says the following are to be avoided by those initiated disciples. And some of them had already been initiated, and it said the 4 principles. Then was an addendum about not to mix too much closely with non-devotees and to avoid sporting activities, frivolous activities, something like that. And I have to see the actual thing. So now, all over his empire, Ashoka carved on stone pillars and on slabs at strategic places all throughout his empire. He had 14 edicts. They start with, no living being can be slaughtered or sacrificed. The bird's agreeing. The bird wants to get in on this. Yeah, look.
Is that a
Hare
mockingbird?
Krishna,
That's a mockingbird.
Yeah,
usually it's on this side though.
it's a mockingbird.
That's the state bird.
That's a mockingbird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the state
I
bird.
thought a mockingbird had a really long tail.
That's pretty long.
That's a pretty long tail.
No, that's a short tail. It's like a pigeon.
Anyway, it's a spirit soul in a bird's body. And he's right there. So no living being can be slaughtered or sacrificed. 2, medical care for human as well as animals throughout his empire. These could be the principles of a political campaign. Medical care for human beings as well as animals. Everyone should be cared for. Monks to tour empire every 5 years for teaching Dharma. Dharma is not religion. It's not a philosophy. It's codes of behavior to bring about a peaceful and prosperous life. And then you hear what he has to say about religion, which is very interesting. One should always respect one's parents, priests, and monks. I mean, that's the 10 Commandments. Honor thy mother and thy father. And that's also, the Brahmins. He makes a distinction between a priest and a monk. And I would assume that the priests are the ones performing the rituals. The monks are more like sannyasis who travel and preach, more living an ascetic life. Prisoners, to be treated humanely. 6, he encouraged his subjects to report to him their concerns regarding the welfare of the administration at all times, no matter where he is or what he is doing. That he was available. There wasn't many layers to get through to him. He encouraged his subjects to give to monks, Brahmins, and the needy. In other words, be charitable. And that was one of the principles in the purport that Yogendra Prabhu read. 9. Reverence for the Dharma and a proper attitude towards teachers was considered better than marriage or other worldly celebrations by the emperor. In other words, these worldly affairs, these worldly celebrations, they have their place, but they're not as on a par as the respect for the Dharma, for these codes of behavior. And so Emperor surmised that glory and fame count for nothing if people do not respect the Dharma. 11. He considered giving Dharma to others or to people is the best gift anyone can have. I mean, that was Prabhupada always said, the highest welfare work is to distribute Lord Chaitanya's movement. He gave that example that, your charity of giving food or giving clothes to the needy is like if you have a boil and it's burning and you blow on it. It's better to cut it. It's better to lance it. It's better to give knowledge of how to end your suffering. Whoever praises his own religion due to excessive devotion and condemns others with the thought, quote, let me glorify my own religion, end quote, only harms his own religion. Therefore, contact between religions is good. Ashok preached that conquest by Dharma is superior to conquest by force, and is carried out. And if it's carried out, if it is conquered by force, it should be done with forbearance and light punishment. The 14 edicts were written in strategic places so that everyone could see them. There was another one, though, I think I missed, where it says that all religions should be respected and encouraged because they, yes, here it is. He welcomed all religions as they desire self-control and purity of heart. He didn't discourage other religious paths because they encourage self-control. They encourage purity of heart. So his rule, he lived for about 40. He was the ruler for 40 years, and then it lasted about another 50 years after that, and it slowly started to diminish after that. But we also know that, and Prabhupada's using this as an example that Lord Buddha's teachings spread because of that state support by a leader, a pious leader, a righteous leader. And then there was also the example in Christianity. What was his name? Constantine. Mm-hmm. He had the Council of Kent or Nicaea? Nicaea. And he established Christianity as the state religion. So then Christianity was no longer just sort of like an underground movement. It became recognized. And he also arranged for the printing of the Bibles. We also have an example in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes when the Chand Kazi tried to stop the kirtan. He's a Muslim. And one of the reasons he wanted to stop it was because the actual Smarta Brahmins were complaining that this was diminishing the potency of the mantra. And he was allowing the untouchables, the lower caste, to chant the mantra. And he treated everyone equally. And that's another point in this particular pastime in terms of following Lord Buddha's teachings, that they still had a caste system then, and the Sudras were always treated very badly. In this particular path, with Buddhism, everyone was the same. Everyone was treated equally. I mean, it was simultaneously one in difference, but everyone had the opportunity, the same opportunity. Everyone had medical care. Everyone was cared for. Everyone was treated with respect. And so, Lord Chaitanya was treating everyone with respect and giving everyone a chance to chant the Hare Krishna mantra equally, even to the point of coming across the ocean, which was forbidden, to the land of the Malechas, which is us. And this was, Prabhupada had to fight so hard against some of these Smarta Brahmins in India. The devotees say they'd be yelling and screaming with this one man who came in, and they didn't know what was being said. But then for 2 weeks afterwards, Prabhupada preached about that, your qualification is not based on your birth. Your qualification is based on your quality and your activities. So everyone has the right to engage in this spiritual practice. So this is non-sectarian. It's not a religion. It is a code of behavior. We can say, what is your religion? My religion is to be austere, to be clean, to be honest, and to be truthful.
Mercy. I was truthful, say mercy.
Honest, yeah. And be merciful, be compassionate, be charitable. The golden rule. To do unto others as you would have them do unto me. And always remember God. Be respectful of other religions. Those people, like Prabhupada, one time when they were forming the God We Trust party, one devotee was saying that, then once we are in power, we can stop all this nonsense religion. And Prabhupada said, no. Anyone who's following the teachings of Jesus Christ, or the proper teachings, and the teachings of Buddha have been so bastardized, you might say, just so badly represented. He didn't teach voidism. Bodhisattva was a part of his, you achieve moksha, you go to a heavenly realm. It was a completely different, he was trying to stop the misuse of the Vedas, where they were in an unregulated way, they were slaughtering animals in the name of the Vedas in sacrifice. He wanted to stop that violence. Much like when Jesus Christ saw how the Pharisees were using sacrifice in the temple for a profit, not for the actual meaning of the sacrifice. And so he kicked them all out. There is a way, if we really think, and I remember very clearly that there was a point when we all came to the conclusion, to finish my point, so when this devotee said that we should kick out all this nonsense religion, and Prabhupada said, no, as long as they are following their religion properly, then that is okay, that's fine, but there shouldn't be allowed any cheating in the name of religion. Just like he would give the example, if a medical man saying, I have a cure for cancer, and it's all bogus, that is a very serious crime. That's called quackery. Same thing. Someone is saying, if I give you this, bogus mantra, or you can do anything you want and still attain God, you just accept accept Him, that He's suffering for you, that's bogus. That isn't what Jesus Christ taught. Jesus Christ said, I forgive you, now go and sin no more. You can't just use Jesus Christ as your whipping boy. You think, and Prabhupada used to say, do you think Jesus Christ would agree to such a nonsense contract as that? You can go on sinning and I'll just keep on going on being nailed to a cross for you. Prabhupada, when Tripurari asked on the morning walk, she said, so is it true that you will come back for your disciples if they fall down? He said, yes. But then he stopped, he dug his cane into the ground, put his head up like this and said, but do not take advantage. I was standing like right on the angle in front, I saw him with that. It was very clear what he meant. There's going to be problems. If you slip up, many an accident on the Royal Road, but you should not use it as an excuse. You should be careful. It's a razor's edge. But anyway, I was just enlivened like that. And so the other last point I wanted to make was our idea of the farm communities back then wasn't just because, Prabhupada said there's going to be a war. That wasn't the only reason. There was also the thought that we need to show. Because in the city temples, you couldn't really show it the same way that you could in a farm community. So we need to show a way how to live according to these principles, according to these codes, to being austere, to being clean, to being honest, to being celibate, to being kind to animals. We need to show how society how community can, in a microcosm, a community that is centered around God and is coming together and working. And here's the other point. When there's a purport in here where Prabhupada uses the expression that Kali's the Kali Yuga was gold standardized. Well, so he's beating on the bull, who's the symbol of religion, and the cow is very important in terms of the milk that we need so we can understand these more subtle spiritual principles. We have the proper brain for it. So, but also he was trying to destroy our economy. The economy that God has laid out, that the cow provides milk just by eating grass. The bull tills the land so we can grow the grains and grow the vegetables. The bull gives us the transportation.
A new baby calf was born yesterday.
Haribol!
A
A bull calf.
We need somebody to train these.
Yeah, we need to make an ox.
Can be adopted.
When Prabhu Balabaja was here from his hierarchy of most important was that the bull was the most important product, or what came as a result of protecting the house, then the dung, then the milk.
Yeah. So, but the point is that so when we destroy our economy, we're no longer self-sufficient. And I've heard even people coming from India saying, you can't expect us to go back to the villages. I have this nice, you have a question?
No.
Oh, you do. What?
I do indeed. I got this very nice note from Maharani. I hate to interrupt your lecture, but it's 8:30. I'm curious about the people that are going to attend the evening program tonight in New Orleans. John's going to attend. Anyone else? Do we know of any others?
So what is the program?
Yeah, so there's the gentleman who was living here for many years.
Ram Toshan.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, his house program is happening tonight.
Oh.
And I got a letter from Maharani saying that Tamal is going to attend and that we should wait for him to return. And I'm just curious if anyone
Return
else...
from where?
Return from the restaurant.
Oh, I see.
What time are you leaving?
She asked us to wait until 5 or so.
Well, you didn't say we should leave about 5.
Yeah, I sent out a text about it. I guess you don't get that. Everybody's
Mr.
welcome.
DeVay is going. Anyone else that you know of you,
I
Kendra?
guess the class
No, not that I know of.
Yogindra John, I, Tamal.
You can
We're
turn
gonna do
that
the
off.
program.
I mean, we'll